Chapter 1: The Echoing Past. Imagine living in a world where the past isn't just behind us, but beside us, like a kindly ghost that refuses to move on. It whispers lessons at night, hoping we'll listen. Our story starts in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows each other's names, sometimes even their secrets. This town has an air about it, as if it's sighing, heavy with memories of times long gone. In the heart of the town stands an ancient oak tree. Its roots dig deep into the ground, much like our history digs into our lives. The townfolk often gather around this tree. It's more than a tree, it's a friend, a witness to all that has been. People hang ribbons on its branches to remember their loved ones who have passed. As the ribbons flutter in the wind, they seem to sing with the voices of those no longer here. There's old Mrs. Willow, always sitting on her porch, crocheting. She might seem lost in her own little world, her hands moving skillfully, making a big blanket from bits of yarn. But if you stop to chat, she's full of stories, like how she met Herbert, her late husband, during a town dance under the stars. She swears that on clear nights, she can hear the faint echoes of the music they danced to. The past, for Mrs. Willow, dances alongside her, keeping her company. And then there's young Billy, who loves exploring the woods just beyond the edge of town. He's always looking for something, though he's not sure what. Perhaps he's seeking adventure or answers or both. One day, Billy found an old coin half buried in the dirt, tarnished and worn. It was from a time long before anyone in town could remember. Billy's dad, Mr. Thompson, suggested taking it to Professor Lang, a historian who lived on the outskirts of town in a house overflowing with papers and books. This professor seemed as old as history itself, with eyes bright and curious. Professor Lang squinted at the coin, holding it up to the light. "This is a piece of a puzzle," he said softly, causing Billy's heart to race with thrill. Lang's home, full of artifacts and whispers of stories long past, was a treasure trove. He told Billy and his dad about cycles. Lang explained how, throughout history, things often repeat. Wars, peace, joy, grief, fits, like we're walking in circles, trying to learn something important. The idea buzzed around Billy's head like an excited bee. It felt like a secret clue no one else had noticed. He started seeing history everywhere. When the town welcomed a new family from far away, Billy remembered hearing about the migrations and settlements from Professor Lang, realizing this was part of that continuing cycle. The new folks brought fresh energy, blending their stories with the town's own tapestry continually being woven. Take the town's bakery, run by Paolo and his daughter Lucia. The scents wafting from their ovens are heavenly, and every Sunday, a line forms along the cobblestone street as people wait for warm bread. Paolo learned his craft from his father, who had learned it from his father back in Italy. It's like playing an old song, each generation adding its own note. They mix old recipes with hints of new flair, shaping flavors just as time shapes history. Lucia remembers making bread with her grandfather. He would tell her tales while kneading the dough about his childhood in a tiny Italian village. While the tales were fascinating, they also felt oddly familiar to her own life here. Different, yet the same. Their family, finding life here, repeats the pattern of searching for better, forging new beginnings on old dreams. Sundays are filled with folks visiting the graveyard, tidying stones, tracing names with tender fingers. Some believe it's a place of echoes, whispers, hints from those who've walked these paths before. Sarah, who tends the town library, loves old letters she finds in the attic. Her grandfather wrote to her grandmother during the war, talking about fear and hope. Reading them makes her realize how, amid changes, the heart's feelings remain the same. Each heartbeat following the drum of life, longing intertwined with time. Energy fills the air when high schoolers flock the schoolyard, echoes of dreams unfolding. Teachers inspire young ones, passing wisdom like a torch. Mr. Howard, with his history lessons, captivates students with tales of past charters and challenges. He talks of revolutions, victories, and regrets, and each time, the class wonders if they're standing at the brink of similar tides. Every time Sarah borrows a book from the library, she feels as though she's diving into a sea that's much deeper than it seems. These stories from other lives make her think about her own. What if each choice she makes is like a pebble tossed in that sea, creating ripples? Maybe everyone she's ever read about is just another ripple, another echo. She wonders if there's a rhythm to it all, an invisible pattern that the townsfolk are unconsciously dancing to, following the steps laid out by the generations before them. One evening, the town gathered for a festival. Laughter and music filled the air as people shared food and stories. Billy noticed how the older people smiled knowingly when they danced with young ones, as if they were passing on something important without saying a word. Maybe there are moments like this all the time when people sense a connection to those who came before them. And maybe, just maybe, Billy thought, understanding this might one day help the town, maybe even the world, find its own place in the great circle of time. As the festival lights flickered like stars, Billy thought about the coin again, about Professor Lang's cycles, as if they were all actors in a grand play, replaying scenes, learning lines, hoping to catch the right cues before the curtain did fall. The past sings softly, a chorus whose notes we may not fully understand, yet somehow they guide us, nudging us toward tomorrow. This small town, full of life, is just one part of the bigger story. It whispers ancient secrets wrapped in newly told tales. Perhaps, as stories are shared and adventures unfold, history touches the present quietly, shaping the future. Each soul, in their own way, writes a page, feeling the echoes that ring through the endless halls of time where the circles spin. What remains is the hope that maybe, just maybe, this time we are listening. Chapter 2: Patterns of Time. Hey there. So, imagine you're sitting in a comfy chair by a warm fire. There's a soft blanket draped over your knees, and you're sipping something cozy. You're thinking about how life seems like a long, winding road. There are twists, turns, ups, downs, and sometimes it feels like we're just going around in circles. It's kind of like when you're learning to ride a bike without training wheels for the first time. You wobble, maybe you fall, but then you get up and try again. Well, some people think that history is like that bike ride. They believe history runs in cycles. Think about it just for a moment. Imagine if everything we've learned, the good decisions and the messy mistakes, are all part of a giant loop. A loop that keeps turning over the ages, showing up in different ways but always with the same lessons at heart. What if there's always a rise and fall, just wearing different clothes and carrying different names? Take our grandparents, for instance. They had to go through struggles and victories, sadness and triumphs, just like us kids of today. They might talk about the hard times, when things weren't so easy. Sometimes they mention moments we can't even imagine because our lives seem so different now. Yet, when you think deeper, it's almost like we're dealing with the same kind of stuff, just with modern twists. Our forebears faced hunger, war, hope, journeys to new lands, and dreamed of making life better. That sounds a lot like today, right? People are always searching for peace, fighting for justice, traveling to find better opportunities, and dreaming big dreams. Life is filled with similar hopes and fears, just wrapped up in shiny new packaging. Now let's consider the world as a whole. There were ancient empires like Rome, large and powerful, thinking they would last forever. But they fell, as do all big things that overreach or get tired. Then other empires like China, with its Great Wall, which rose and fell as well. Each of these had moments they were on top of the world, and then moments they had to learn tough lessons. And those patterns weren't limited just to empires. Consider the stories of invention and discovery, like the printing press, or electricity, or even the internet we use so much today. Each one revolutionized the way people lived and thought, just like how fire must have seemed magic to ancient folks who didn't understand it yet. Innovations bring light to dark places, opening minds and pathways to something new. And yet, with each wave of progress, there seems to come a time of confusion, where people must figure out how to handle the changes. But let's bring it back to maybe the most common cycle: nature. Seasons tell us about cycles through winter, spring, summer, and fall, each one rolling right into the next without fail. People plant seeds in the spring and hope for harvest in the fall, much like humans have done for thousands of years. This natural cycle of growth and rest mirrors what we experience in life, and perhaps in history. Now, some folks believe that human history keeps playing out scenarios like an age-old song on repeat. It may be that progress is never linear but a series of loops, slowly spiraling upwards like a child's slinky going down the stairs. As each generation, each era, each civilization spins through its course, it learns just a bit more, adding lines to the never-ending story. There are ups and downs, times of great insight, and periods of deep misunderstanding. Good and not so good, all viewed differently depending on where you're standing or who you're standing with. All this imagining means we're asking, are we at the end of a cycle now? Are we about to step into a transformative period, the kind our ancestors have stepped into time and again? If everyone has a sense of familiarity, like we've been here before, it's because, maybe, deep down, it's true. People talk about feeling like they're reliving moments. Songs and styles come back in fashion. Ideas thrive, fade, and then flourish anew. Perhaps we're moving towards something big, something new, or maybe something not so new at all. If you're feeling a little bit like you've read this story somewhere before, you're not alone. It's like reading a well-loved book where each time brings new understanding. So, when you think of what's happening around you and everything feels a bit too familiar, enjoy the ride. You might just be part of one turn of history's spiral that others will one day look back on. The same way we marvel over what came before us. So wrap up tight in that blanket, feel the warmth of the fire, and sip your warm drink. We're all part of the same long and winding story, learning from yesterday, today, and tomorrow. As always, there's much more to come. Chapter 3: Cycles Unseen. Hey there, let's take a moment and think about something pretty big. Imagine all of history as this massive, never-ending circle. It sounds a bit wild, right? But, you know, some people believe that what's happened before might just happen again. It's like there are these unseen cycles in life, repeating over and over. Now, don't worry. We're diving into this together. Just try to picture how many old stories seem familiar when we hear them again today. Sometimes it feels like the same kinds of things keep happening, just dressed up in new clothes. It could be the fall of a powerful country or the rise of an inspiring leader. And sometimes it's about regular folks just like us trying to get by in changing times. Let's think back a bit. Historians talk about how societies rise, hit a peak, and then come crashing down. The funny thing is, humans throughout time have seemed to find themselves in similar boats. Whether it's ancient empires or more modern countries, they often face big challenges that seem oddly familiar. War, politics, money troubles, and even dealing with new technology, these themes show up over and over. Look at how ancient Rome fell. Some people say there were a bunch of reasons, like overexpansion, political chaos, and economic problems. Sounds familiar, right? Fast forward to today, and some of those issues still bother us. It's like we're stuck playing an old song on repeat. And how about the Industrial Revolution? Back then, machines started doing what people used to do by hand. It changed everything. But it also left a lot of folks worried about their jobs. Race through history and see how people still worry about technology today. Like when robots and computers threaten to take over work. It's almost like those same worries keep coming around. Even in nature, cycles are plain as day. The sun rises and sets, seasons come and go, and rivers flow to the ocean and back again. Life itself is one big cycle. Birth follows death, and then there's birth again. These patterns in nature show us cycles that are steady and reliable. So, why does history seem to repeat too? Maybe it's because humans have their habits, quirks, and ways of doing things that never quite change. Greed for power, longing for peace, the need for connection, they all drive us. And as much as we try to learn from past mistakes, sometimes it seems like we're bound to repeat them. Now, let's chat about today. We're living in a time of huge change, feeling like we're on the edge of something big. Things are shifting fast, with technology blitzing through our lives and markets popping and dropping. We've got global conversations about climate change, big issues about fairness and freedom, and tensions bubbling between nations. It all feels like we're near a tipping point and maybe about to start anew, or possibly seeing the curtain drop on an old act. Some thinkers out there suggest we're not doing anything brand new, just revisiting old acts in this play of life. Whether it's revolutions, migrations, or the rise of new ideas, they've all happened before in one form or another. It's curious to wonder if living through history is like reading a novel that's so gripping and familiar because we've seen this plotline before. It might sound a little unsettling, thinking we're near the end of a big historical cycle, as if we're on a giant roller coaster ride, steadily climbing to that peak before everything changes. But not everything has to be scary. Sometimes, great new beginnings are just on the other side of an ending. If cycles do indeed exist, understanding them could be our key to making better choices. What if we learned from those who came before us, using their lives as a sort of map? Maybe history repeating itself isn't just about mistakes, but also about realizing good patterns, ones we can repeat and improve. So, we stand here at the edge of what feels like an impending shift. Maybe all we need is to look back, keep the lessons close, and step forward with open eyes. Together, we can think about what's come before, challenge the status quo, and maybe, just maybe, play a role in weaving a better chapter for those who will read our stories in the cycles that lie ahead. Chapter 4. Dacia Vu in History. History is an interesting thing. It's full of stories about people and events that happened long ago. Sometimes, when we look closely at these stories, it feels like the same things keep happening over and over. This idea that events from the past have a way of repeating themselves is a bit mind-boggling. It's like we're living in a giant loop, going through the same motions, and yet, every time something happens, it feels new and surprising. Imagine you're walking down a road that you've traveled many times before. You might notice the same tree with the crooked branches or the funny little dog that always barks as you walk by. The path is the same, yet each walk might feel a bit different because the sky changes, or there's a new flower blooming by the side of the road. History is like this road. The major landmarks stay the same, but the little details can change with time. Let's think about some of these repeating patterns from the past. Take, for instance, the rise and fall of great cities or empires. Long ago, there were mighty places like Babylon, Rome, and the cities of the Maya. They were vibrant, full of life and culture, but they all eventually crumbled. They grew powerful, faced challenges, and finally fell into ruin. Centuries later, new cities rose up, perhaps even learning from the past, but sometimes not. Often, economies go through cycles too. There will be times when everyone seems to be doing well and money flows freely. Then, a few bad decisions or accidents later, and markets crash, causing hard times for many. The Great Depression of the 1930s is one such period. People lost jobs, savings disappeared, and it took a long time for things to get better. If we jump forward in time, we see similar crises happening again, like the economic downturn of 2008. Even now, experts keep warning that another dip could be just around the corner. War is another repeating chapter in our history books. Conflicts seem to arise over the same things: territory, power, resources, or even pride. The hope for peace is strong, and many have tried to avoid war through treaties and talks. Yet, it's like a shadow lurking in the background. Once one conflict is over, another finds a way to emerge. The world wars of the 20th century were global struggles then, and today, tensions still exist that make people worry about fresh wars erupting. Then there are moments when new inventions come along and change everything. Think about the printing press. It turned everyone's world upside down by making books available to many more people. Then there was the steam engine, which led to fast trains and new ways to travel. The internet is another good example. It brought the world closer together in ways people couldn't even dream of a century ago. With each of these big changes, society had to adjust and rethink many things, just like it's doing now with ever smarter technology. Even on a smaller scale, people experience familiar patterns in everyday life. Politics often seem to cycle between various ideologies, almost like a swinging pendulum. Cultures experience a fun throwback, where old trends in music, fashion, and art find new fans. Sometimes it feels like everyone, especially kids, discovers things anew, even if their parents or grandparents knew all about them. Another curious thing is how we humans often face similar moral challenges. Stories of right and wrong, justice and unfairness, love and hate aren't new. They appear in ancient myths and continue in modern stories. Every generation tries to find new solutions, yet certain dilemmas are as old as time. We also have the rise of leaders who captivate or divide the masses. Some are seen as heroes, while others become legends of infamy. It's clear that the names change, but the roles they play do not. It's almost like casting for a play where the script remains the same, but the actors are different. It's worth noting the environmental patterns too. Nature seems to have its cycles of warm and cold periods arriving and departing like a tide. Scientists study old ice and tree rings to understand how climates have shifted before. Today, we face climate concerns that echo warnings from the past, reminding us of periods when nature seemed to be out of balance. If the thought of reliving moments sounds like a loop, that's because it is. But history isn't meant to make us feel stuck. Instead, it's like a teacher, gently reminding us of lessons we've learned or lessons we've forgotten. By understanding the patterns, perhaps we grow wiser, even if the loop of life seems to circle around again. So, as we journey forward, and perhaps near the turn of another grand cycle, it's valuable to watch for signs from yesteryears. History, with all its repetitions, is rich with teachings that can guide us, challenge us, and even comfort us. And while it's easy to think things will always go on as they have, each of us has a role in creating tomorrow's chapter. In becoming aware of the past's echoes, maybe we can make the next round a little brighter. Chapter 5. Rhythms of Collapse. Think about how life sometimes feels like a big circle. We wake up, eat, work, rest, and do it all over again. Now imagine that this big circle isn't just in our own lives, but in how the world works too. That's what we're diving into right now. It's like we're riding a huge merry-go-round of human history, with ups and downs, and twists and turns. Some folks believe we might be near one of those big twists, where everything changes, and it can feel like a lot is uncertain. The idea is that history doesn't really repeat itself in a perfect loop, but it does have a pattern. People often say history is like a spiral. This means it feels like we've been here before, even though things aren't exactly the same. Imagine you're sitting with some old friends, sharing stories of the past. You start to see how even though your lives have changed, similar themes keep popping up. History is like that too. Different generations face different problems, but sometimes the problems look suspiciously alike. Imagine this happening on a grand scale with entire cities, countries, and ways of living. It can get pretty wild when you see all the connections. Some wise folks from way back then thought this way too. They believed that civilizations, no matter how powerful or grand they were, go through stages. First, there's a rise where everything seems to work perfectly. People discover new things, art and culture flourish, and wonders are built. Then there's a golden age where the world seems rich and full of promise. But after that, something shifts. New challenges crop up, resources get scarce, or people stop getting along. It's like watching a play where everything was going so well until out of the blue, something changes the story, and not for the better. If you look back at history books or old ruins, you'll see reminders of places and people who once were at the top of the world. The Romans, the ancient Greeks, the mighty Egyptians, and so many more left their mark before taking their final bow. Every rise seems linked to a fall, and then, after a time, a new rise begins. Often, as these societies grow, they start to think they are untouchable, that nothing could possibly bring them down. But nothing stays the same forever. Sometimes small cracks start to form. Maybe it's a political clash, a debate about beliefs, or perhaps it's just running out of room or food. Those cracks can grow bigger and bigger until one day, the system can't hold itself up anymore. Think of it like a sandcastle on the beach. You build, and it's beautiful and strong for a time. But eventually, the tide comes in. The waves hit faster and harder, and little by little, pieces of the castle crumble and wash away. It might be heartbreaking, watching something so beautiful begin to fall, but there's hope at the end. The sand doesn't disappear, it just moves. The cycle makes room for new castles, new dreams, and new stories. What makes this whole idea even more interesting is that we're living in an age of rapid change. Technology connects us, but it also shakes things up at a mind-bending speed. We're more connected than ever, yet sometimes feel more divided. In one part of the world, people are making incredible discoveries, while in another, they're facing serious hardships. It's almost dizzying, isn't it? But amidst all this, some whisper that what we're experiencing is part of a bigger rhythm. It's like the whole world is dancing to a beat that's both ancient and new. Perhaps it's that very beat we need to tune ourselves to. If our world really does swing between rise and fall, then recognizing where we are in that dance can help. Maybe we can learn from those who came before their victories and their mistakes. We don't have to repeat their patterns, not if we watch, listen, and make thoughtful choices. Our ancestors might have missed the warning signs or refused to accept change. But maybe this time, now that we're aware, we can do better. We might be able to steer our ship away from rocks we can see clearer than they did. It's not to say this is an easy task. Adapting and growing, after all, are not smooth, simple processes. But wherever we are in this grand cycle, there's both a warning and a chance to build something lasting, or at least more aware to navigate the challenges wisely. Just like the sand on the beach, our choices shape what comes after the storm. We get to decide if we want to ride this wave differently. There's comfort in knowing that change is natural. Like watching the seasons shift from winter to spring, history's tides will ebb and flow. Understanding where we are in the grand scheme feels a little less daunting when you know this is part of a larger pattern. In a way, the knowledge gives us the power to act with foresight and gentle understanding. So, as we stand on the brink of whatever comes next, maybe the best thing we can do is talk, listen, and learn. Share your thoughts and dreams and fears. Build connections, not castles of sand. Because the greater our understanding, the smoother the next part of the dance can be. Now, next time you look at the news or chat around the dinner table, see if you can spot the patterns swirling quietly beneath the surface. Can you see those ancient rhythms guiding our steps, all of us moving together towards a future that, hopefully, remembers the lessons of the past and embraces the potential for a brighter tomorrow? What a journey it would be if we finally became the generation that uses history's cycle not as an anchor to drag us down, but as a compass to guide our way forward. Chapter 6. Turning Points. So, here we are again, thinking about those big moments in history that seemed to change everything. You know the ones, some call them pivots, others call them twists of fate, and they've got a way of popping up again and again, almost like we're in an endless loop. It's a little daunting if you think about it, because every time we think we're moving forward, something happens that makes us take a hard look back, almost as if we're stuck on some cosmic merry-go-round. Let's talk about some of these moments, these that have left their mark on time. There was a time when the world was on the brink of great change, with the rise and fall of civilizations. Take the Roman Empire, for instance. It was big, powerful, and looked like it would last forever. But then, slowly and surely, it started to fall apart. Things got messy, leaders squabbled, and before anyone fully realized it, the empire that seemed unbreakable crumbled. People learned then, well, they should have that nothing lasts forever, no matter how grand or invincible it seems. Fast forward a bit, and think about explorers setting out across uncharted seas, forever altering the maps that people knew. Christopher Columbus sailed across the ocean and stumbled upon lands that were rich with possibility. It was a mixed bag, as most things are. Yes, There were new opportunities, but there were also challenges, changes, and not everyone was happy. People realized that with discovery came the unknown, and the unknown is a tricky thing to manage. Then, along came the industrial age, turning everything upside down with machines, factories, and fast-moving progress. Folks marveled at the great big engines and steely tracks cutting through landscapes. But this period of innovation also brought struggles, like poor working conditions and those pesky growing pains that often come with getting too much too fast. It was an exciting time, filled with bright ideas, but also pressing problems. Change seemed to quicken its pace with the advent of digital gadgets and the vast web of connections that bind us all together. Suddenly, everyone was plugged in, and the world felt smaller than ever. These inventions were a great leap forward, but also a bit of a headache at times. The world was changing again, and it was happening fast. People found themselves grappling with questions about privacy and how to handle new waves of information that bombarded them from every angle. Throughout these times, there have been voices that spoke of cycles, of the repeating nature of history. Is it true that history spins like a wheel? Some believe it. They look at wars, economic booms, and busts, and see clear patterns. Others think things are more random. Still, those recurring themes are hard to ignore. Looking around today, we might wonder if we're nearing another big shift. It's natural to ask ourselves what we should be learning. Are we making the same mistakes? Are we destined to keep making them? All around us, there are signs that things are moving and changing once again. Climate change is a massive topic today. People talk about ice caps, weather patterns, and ways to save the planet. It's like a collective wake-up call. Once again, we face a challenge that requires unity and action, much like the times when people first gathered together to build communities and societies. There's tension in the air, much like there always is right before something happens. If you listen closely, you can hear it in the conversations, in the worried tones of experts on television. We stand at a crossroads, wondering whether we'll take the right path. There are plenty urging us to act, to learn from the past, and make better choices. People say it's a chance to do things differently, to correct the errors we humans seem to circle back to time and again, but it's not all doom and gloom. With every cycle in history, there have been those who have emerged with new ideas, fresh perspectives, and a can-do spirit that turns the tide in positive directions. During every tough time, there have been leaders and everyday folks who have stepped up to push humanity forward in spectacular ways, reminding us that even when history repeats, there's always room for improvement, for growth. So, as we stand on what feels like another pivotal moment, maybe it's the perfect time to reflect. Really think about what history has taught us, and what we can do to write a better story this time. It might not be a neat and easy task, but nothing worth doing ever is, right? Perhaps, just perhaps, with the benefit of hindsight and a forward-thinking mindset, we can make this turning point one that future generations will look back on as a great leap forward rather than just another loop in the cycle. Chapter 7: History's Clockwork. Imagine the world as a giant clock with gears and wheels turning and ticking away. Every tick brings us forward, but what if it really just takes us around in a big circle? What if each new beginning was just the last chapter repeating itself with only a few changes? Imagine if what happens in the world today has already happened, and it's just part of a repeating cycle. We'd be like characters in a story that gets told again and again, always ending up back where it started. Take a moment to think about the past. Big events, like great wars, mighty empires rising and falling, and discoveries that change everything. They all seem new and unique when they happen. But if you look closely, patterns start to emerge. Empires rise with great leaders and new ideas. They grow strong and conquer lands. But eventually, they stumble, crumble, and fall. Then new leaders and ideas take their place, and the cycle starts again. It's like watching a giant wheel spin, always coming back to where it began. Many people throughout history have noticed this. They wrote about how life and history might be like seasons, changing. Think of it like winter turning to spring, then summer, then fall, and back to winter again. Just as the world spins around the sun. It's comforting, in a way, to think that maybe we're not just floating around without a plan. Perhaps life has its rhythm, a dance that keeps repeating through time. Look at the Renaissance, that time when art and knowledge blossomed. People looked back to the times of ancient Greek and Roman thinkers. They took old ideas and gave them new life, sparking a wave of creativity and innovation. Fast forward a few centuries, and see how the Industrial Revolution did much the same. Fresh ideas about machines and engines brought massive changes to the world. Now, in today's digital age, we're doing it again. We take what's come before and give it a fresh twist, making life faster and more interconnected. And what about those who dream of the future? Think of science fiction stories written long ago. They paint pictures of flying cars, computers talking back, and journeys to other worlds. Today, many of those wild ideas aren't so far-fetched anymore. It's like our dreams stretch ahead and reach back at the same time, pulling the past into the future. Why does it seem like history repeats? One idea is that human nature doesn't change much over time. People the world over feel love, anger, and hope. They want safety, belonging, and purpose. Despite advances in technology and society, these basic needs and desires stay constant. So, communities and leaders make the same choices again and again. What worked once, they hope, will work again. Consider how people react when faced with challenges. Throughout history, times of hardship often lead to periods of great change. When life becomes difficult, whether from war or famine, people look for new answers. They challenge old ideas and push for progress. But when life is peaceful and prosperous, societies tend to slow down, getting comfortable and perhaps a bit complacent. This ebb and flow between innovation and comfort might explain the cycles we see. Then, there are those whispers of ancient wisdom, telling tales of how everything is connected. Some say the universe has its order, and people are part of that grand design. They talk of karma, destiny, or fate. Strings that pull us along paths meant to teach us certain lessons until they are finally learned. So, if we keep repeating history, maybe it's because we're still learning and growing, trying to figure out the grand puzzle of life. Consider how this view of history impacts our daily lives today. If we think of ourselves in a cycle, maybe we have the power to change the story. We learn from past mistakes, wars started, injustices ignored, and can choose to act differently. Recognizing recurring patterns gives us a chance to break them, to move the world forward instead of just spinning in place. These grand thoughts can make the world seem large and a little overwhelming, but they also give us hope. Because if history is a wheel, always turning, then every end is really a new beginning. Each one of us plays a part. Our choices today weave into the tapestry of tomorrow. Perhaps understanding that can help us feel connected to everything and everyone, past, present, and future. Imagine waking up tomorrow, filled with this knowledge. The same sun that shone on great thinkers and leaders of the past shines on you today. What would you do differently? Would recognizing the cycles make today's troubles feel a little less daunting? Knowing that people have overcome much before us, that their struggles sometimes led to brighter days, might just help us find courage when we need it most. While we might not know exactly if or when the cycle ends or starts anew, pondering these ideas helps us appreciate our place in the grand scheme of things. There's a certain peace in the thought that whatever happens, we're not alone. We're part of a larger story, one that's been unfolding for ages and will continue long after us. Our actions are like words written in the margins of history's book, influencing the chapters yet to come. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to inspire us to write the best story we can. Chapter 8. The Spiral of Events. Imagine for a moment that history, with all its twists and turns, moves in circles. Sometimes, when things seem new or strange, they might just be echoes of the past. It's like we're walking along a path that loops around, and every so often, we find ourselves somewhere we've seen before, only to realize it's slightly different than last time. This idea can be a bit puzzling at first, but if we think about it, many parts of our lives and our world really do feel like they repeat over time, just dressed in new clothes. Think about how often we see trends come back into style. Your grandparents might chuckle when they see teenagers wearing clothes that look just like what they had in their own closets decades ago. It's as if the fashion world is a perfect little reminder that nothing is ever truly new. Even the music we listen to, with fresh beats and polished sounds, sometimes borrows from tunes and rhythms that were popular long before we were even born. These little repeating loops are easy for us to spot, but they might also hint at something much bigger. If we look at what's been happening in the world, there are striking examples where the past seems to revisit us. Think about the political landscape. Leaders rise with promises of change, of making things better, of fixing what they believe is broken. Time goes on, and often, the same challenges that existed before seem to pop up all over again. Wars, once fought for freedom, justice, or land, spring to mind when we see new conflicts arise. History books tell us stories of empires expanding and crumbling, leaders rising and falling, and great achievements followed by moments of decline. Sometimes it's hard not to wonder if we're just following age-old patterns, stepping into the same traps again and again. In our personal lives, too, this kind of cycle can feel very real. Have you ever noticed how people repeat similar mistakes? Maybe a friend goes through the same kind of relationship drama every few years. Or perhaps you find yourself falling into routines or habits you thought you had left behind. This sense of déjà vu can be unnerving, as if we are bound to follow paths already laid out by shadowy past versions of ourselves. Yet knowing this could help us understand how to break free from it, if only we pay attention. Some folks believe these cycles are more than just coincidences or habits. They see them as a rule of life, almost like a universal law. Ancient civilizations talked about time in cycles rather than as a straight line. The Mayans, for example, had calendars that didn't just move forward, but instead looped back around, showing how they viewed life as full of repeating patterns in nature, society, and the cosmos. Even the ancient Greeks had a phrase, "History is cyclical," reflecting a belief that events tend to repeat over and over. During different ages of human history, there have been moments where people worried they were living in a turning point, a moment where the cycle might reset or change shape. For example, many centuries ago, people feared the turn of the millennium, thinking it could bring great upheaval or change. That anxiety bubbled up again in the year 2000 with similar concerns about the future. These fears often arise because people sense a buildup of events or tensions that feel eerily familiar, as if the entire world is on the brink of déjà vu on a grand scale. Some thinkers and philosophers have tried to make sense of why history and life seem to work in this spiraling way. They suggest that it's a way for humanity to learn and grow. Just like a spiral staircase, we appear to move upward even as we circle around familiar points. The idea is that each time we find ourselves in the same type of situation, we might get a little better at handling it. We might make choices that are wiser, guided by the lessons of our past experiences. But this requires acknowledging the patterns and being willing to learn from them, something that isn't always easy for individuals or societies to do. So, what if we're nearing a point where one of these great cycles might conclude or start anew? It's a thought that can stir both excitement and unease. Those who worry about this possibility often keep an eye on signs they believe indicate such shifts. They look at changes in climate, major technological advances, shifts in economic power, and other significant markers. Whether any of these truly signal an endpoint or a new beginning is something that only time will tell. What we can do, as individuals living through what may or may not be a remarkable time in history, is to become more aware of the patterns around us. By looking back to understand where we've been and paying attention to how events mirror each other, we equip ourselves with the understanding needed to navigate what lies ahead. It's about taking responsibility for our part in the cycle and making choices that steer it in a direction we hope for. Maybe, just maybe, by looking really closely at and learning from it, we can help shape a future that feels new and inspired, rather than just another spin through a well-worn loop. With enough awareness and effort, each turn of the spiral can lead us to higher ground, where the past guides but does not dictate the path forward. Chapter 9. Endgame Signals. You ever get that feeling like you've heard the same story over and over again? Like maybe we're all characters in a big, swirling tale that's been told throughout time. It's sort of like when you watch a TV show that goes on forever, and the same themes, the same plot twists, and the same heroes and villains keep coming back. Maybe our history is not all that different. What if we're part of a big cycle, like a wheel turning round and round, instead of traveling in a straight line to somewhere new? When we look back at history, we notice patterns, and it's not just the clothes or the music that keep coming back in style. It's also ideas and events, the rise and fall of great leaders, nations, and cultures. People have been wondering about this since forever, the idea that time is like a loop. Ancient philosophers, folks who spent a lot of time thinking about these sorts of things, talked about it. They thought time might not be a straight path, but instead like a circle that brings us back to where we started, over and over again. So, if history really does repeat itself, what would that mean for us today? How would we know if we're near the end of one of those cycles? Imagine having clues or signals that show us we might be hitting that point. Sort of like the way geese flying south signal the start of winter. We could look at the past and try to pick out what happened during other big moments. When things came to a close and a new beginning sparked up, maybe there were wars or diseases or big changes in who was in charge. Do you remember hearing about those empires that once seemed unstoppable, like the Roman Empire or the big dynasties in China? They once held so much power, but eventually they fell apart. Some people think today's world might be living in similar times. We have wars happening, just like in many past ages. It's like each time, all those places with fighting and struggles could be early signals, much like rumbling clouds before a storm. Then there's the environment changing, like weather becoming wild and unpredictable. You know how people talk about climate change today, with big storms and weird weather hitting us all around the world? Well, that's another kind of signal where things in the past also saw nature acting out when big changes were happening. Technology, too, is a big part of the picture. Look around and see how rapidly things have changed in just a few decades. The phone you carry might be smarter than the computers that used to fill an entire room. Machines are doing more and more, even to the point where some folks worry that they'll eventually take over many jobs. In older times, new tools and inventions completely changed the way people lived and worked, leading to massive shifts in society. Now, some fear it could lead to a kind of collapse again, if not managed wisely. Financial systems also play a role. There have been crashes before, like the Great Depression, and each time, it affected almost everyone. You hear about the stock market being volatile, where things rise and fall dramatically, much faster and with more impact than they used to. Money, being such a human invention, ties a lot of strings in our society, and when it wobbles, it sends ripples everywhere. In past cycles, when these systems falter and economies tumble, it's another hint that we might be approaching a turning point. People nowadays seem on edge, too, don't they? There's a lot of division, a lot of folks at odds over what feels like everything. Society feels pulled in many directions, with folks arguing more, trusting less, and it's sort of like the tension in the air before a thunderstorm breaks. Stories from history tell us this has happened before major shifts as well. When people start to feel uneasy, like the ground beneath them isn't quite solid anymore, that unease can grow into bigger changes. And then there's the art and culture. Art is a reflection of how people feel deep down. If you look at movies, books, and music today, you see themes of dystopia, of futures gone wrong, or of people grappling with change and uncertainty. It's almost like artists can sense these, and they pour these feelings into their work. The same was true in earlier times, too. People made art that showed their thoughts and fears about the world spinning in a different or unsettling direction. When we gather all these signals together in one basket, they start to paint a picture that looks and feels familiar. Echoing moments in time that came before big changes happened. It's like seeing the same play repeated in a theater, but the actors and scenery have just changed. Some folks say that knowing our past offers a roadmap to the future. If we're nearing the end of a cycle, perhaps we can learn from those past moments, picking up the pieces that fit together in new ways that avoid repeating any grim mistakes. It's a bit of a puzzle, a game of trying to read the signs, just like predicting the weather. But unlike the weather, which is natural, our human-made world means these shifts could be steered for better outcomes, if we're wise enough to listen to the signals. Maybe, just maybe, by paying attention to these whispers from the past, we might find clearer pathways through uncertainty, preventing a once again fall into chaos. Chapter 10, The Loop's Finale. In a small, quiet town, there lived a woman named Ellie. She often wondered if the world was just a big loop, going round and round in circles forever. She thought that maybe things were meant to happen again and again, just in new forms. It was a comforting thought for Ellie, as it made her feel like everything had a purpose, even if she couldn't see it clearly just yet. Ellie spent most of her days at the town library, where she worked as a librarian. She loved being surrounded by books because they often whispered secrets of the past. Each morning, as she dusted the shelves and arranged the books, she envisioned the stories contained within them. To her, books were like time capsules, capturing moments, thoughts, and feelings of people from long ago. She often felt like a guardian of these stories, ensuring they survived for the future. Ellie had always been curious about history. especially the mysterious patterns that seemed to repeat across time. Wars would start and end, peace would follow, technology would change the world, and yet, humans seemed to circle back to the same challenges. She noticed that many cultures had myths and legends describing similar tales of rise and fall, growth and decay. It was fascinating and puzzling. In the evenings, Ellie would sit by her cozy window seat, a steaming cup of tea in hand. She would look out at the stars, wondering if anyone else felt the cycle of life spinning along with the earth. She imagined that somewhere, in a far-off place, someone was gazing at the same stars, pondering the same mysteries. It was funny how small the world could feel sometimes, yet it was vast and full of hidden stories. One day, while organizing the history section of the library, Ellie stumbled upon an old, forgotten book. Its worn cover and faded title intrigued her. Carefully, she blew the dust off and opened its pages. Inside, she found the most peculiar thing: a map. But this was not a map of any physical place. It showed a timeline, a loop through the ages, highlighting significant events that seemed eerily similar to those she knew from different points in history. This discovery filled Ellie with excitement. She couldn't wait to dive deeper into the book's mysteries. Over the following weeks, every free moment was spent examining the map and the writings that went along with it. The more she read, the more she realized that history's repetition was not just a theory but something more profound. Almost like a dance, where the steps were always the same, though the dancers changed. Ellie began to see patterns in everyday life that mirrored the ancient cycles described in her old book. She started meeting people who seemed to play roles from past tales. Her friend Sam, always caught in some misadventure, reminded her of a trickster from an age-old story. The town's wise old Mr. Thompson had traits similar to the wise mentors she had read about in countless epic journeys. They all seemed to fit into the grand play she was beginning to understand. As months passed, the map and book became Ellie's close companions. Each page turned was a step deeper into the loop that bound every story, every life. She began to share her thoughts with others around her. Curiously, they also started to see the symmetry in history and daily life. A group of like-minded individuals formed around Ellie, gathered every week in the library to discuss the stories and cycles. This newfound circle quickly grew fond of meeting in the dusty library, each bringing fresh insights and discoveries. They called themselves the Seekers, always on a quest for truth hidden in the folds of time. Together, they pieced together stories that once seemed disjointed and unrelated. But the more they understood the loop, the more they questioned. What if history was not just repeating for the sake of repetition? What if there was a bigger, more beautiful picture they just couldn't quite see? They wondered if unraveling the loop's full story could help them understand what needed to change, so they wouldn't simply start over once more. The Seekers found inspiration in the idea that perhaps the loop was approaching a grand finale, a final chapter that could offer a new beginning rather than another rotation of the same steps. They began to wonder what actions needed to be taken to make this the last cycle, leading to something new and remarkable. Ellie and her friends were driven by hope and curiosity, hoping to spot what others before them had missed. The notion that they stood on the brink of change filled their hearts with purpose and anticipation. They continued their meetings, each becoming more profound, as they shared not only knowledge but also dreams of what the world could become. Through this journey, Ellie often thought about how one person's story connected to another's, much like how individual stars formed constellations in the night sky. Each tale and each life was a part of a greater narrative. This brought Ellie immense joy and comfort, knowing that everyone played a part in shaping history's direction. As time went by, Ellie felt a profound sense of peace, even as they neared the end of this cycle. She understood that the beauty of life lay in its interwoven tales, each story, every life, feeding into the river that was time. Whether the loop would close with finality or birthing a new world, the truth remained. Every ending carried the seeds of a new beginning, and that was the most exciting story of all. Thus, Ellie and the Seekers continued their quest, trusting that whether or not this was the end of a cycle, their shared understanding would light the way forward.